Well, hello, Author Nation. Thanks for tuning in to another State of the Nation podcast. We're glad you're here. We do this for you. In this episode, we've got two Joes for the price of one. Joe Solari is talking to Joe Pulizzi from Content Entrepreneur Expo about building events, brands, content marketing, and more. So you've tuned in at the right time. Stay tuned.
All right. Joe Pulizzi, great to have you on the Author Nation podcast.
It is about time.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for the request that I could be on your show, and finally.
Well, and
here.
we're doing it at your show.
Yeah.
Like, this is pretty meta, right?
Thank you.
The show that you started how long ago?
This is our third year, Content Entrepreneur Expo,
Okay.
and it's been a great turnout in Cleveland, Ohio, my hometown. So thanks for all your support. It's been great.
So we covered the publishing track here. This is something the team came out for. And one of the things that's been really good for the show, we want to hear about you, but I just want to say thanks because it's really going to help our community, because our team came here and saw how well you run the show, and we have to exceed this. We really want to be at this level, and I think for most of the team to be at a show and not have to run it,
It's a different experience.
it's a really nice experience.
As an event producer for, almost 20 years I've been doing this, to go to an event and not have to work it is a blessing.
Yeah.
And I love to look around and see, because it's all about the experience of the attendees, and you're looking around, signage, great, okay, the chair setup, and you look at all those, here's the sponsors are here, why is the food there?
Yeah.
And everything has a reason and there's a strategy, but most attendees don't see that, but you and I in the events industry, we look at all that stuff.
Yeah, right. It's like we know all the things that are coming up that have been irksome to us, or
That's right. It's like somebody wasn't thinking when they put that plant there.
yeah. Well, and the other one is like you got to plan everything so that you have the time for what you could never plan for and goes wrong, right?
Well, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. Okay, so this event, we have 400 people here. Yours is thousands and thousands of people. You don't realize it's a 12-month process. As soon as you end your event last year, you're already working on the next one. Sometimes even beforehand, It could be a 15-month process.
Yeah, that's true. We're doing things for 25 where we're like, oh, well, this is going to be bigger, so we need a bigger room, renegotiating all that.
That's
fun
right.
stuff.
I mean, you don't realize. I mean, you've got to book things for 3-4 years out. I mean, it's a challenge. It is a whole separate type of deal that I don't think a lot of attendee goers notice, nor they should, because you don't want that experience to be touched in any way outside of them thinking, I don't know where to go, or it's like that. It's all been planned out in advance.
Yeah. So let's talk about why you are going to be one of our speakers at a conference that's mainly fiction people. And I was able to go to the social media marketing world and see you do your content marketing pitch presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw it, I was like, holy cow, this guy needs to come into this industry and pop our bubble and help them understand that there's so many different ways that content can be the driver of your business and how it's all integrated, and a word you used earlier, experience. So can you go back in time and talk about like how we got to the fact that you're willing to go through this on a yearly basis? Not only done it once, sold a company, you got out, and you were a repeat offender. You went back and did it again.
Went back in. I was lucky because I started my journey in business-to-business publishing. And so I learned from some of the media greats and how you do it. And so basically you build an audience. And once you build an audience that knows, likes, and trusts you, you monetize that in multiple ways. And if you want to be a successful media company, you're a successful diversified media company. So you are running sponsorship and ads. You have events in person and online. You're doing affiliate programs. You're maybe taking donations. You've got premium products like books and ebooks. You're selling products and services, consulting. So that took me into starting what became Content Marketing Institute in 2007. Was, okay, we're going to teach the how-to of content marketing. I wrote a book. I mean, before really doing anything else, I launched a blog and a book at the same time, and that book was about content marketing. Like, how can marketers be successful with content marketing? But that was just a piece of the puzzle. So I really believe in the book experience and how important that can be, and the revenue generation components and the data components. But it's just one of the tools you have, because once you build that audience, we're like, okay, we want this to be a multi-million dollar operation. You have clients that have gotten there through just books.
Yeah, just through books.
And that's wonderful. But you and I, you know the possibility of, you have some of your clients that are doing way more than books, and they've created a content brand of themselves outside of just the book process. So as I'm talking with authors from kind of my standpoint, what I'm going to talk about at the event, it's okay, yes, you have this amazing book experience, and that's wonderful, but it can be so much more than that. What is the email newsletter show that you're going to put on a regular basis? What are these ongoing webinars or in-person events that you're going to plug in that make sense, so you have another touch point? What social media platform are you going to focus on that you can take them through that journey that will ultimately lead them to your in-person event or your book or whatever? So as we were building Content Marketing Institute, so I started with one book, and that one book turned into an email newsletter audience of 200,000 plus. That turned into an event of 4,000 attendees. And before we sold in 2016, we were a 10 million plus property, putting about 3 million to the bottom line.
Nice.
And we had a really good exit in 2016. But I want, and granted, it's not just, there's multiple ways to do this as an author, as you know. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea of taking some risk off the table with there's not just one way, there's all these ways. So if you have 1 year where advertising's not working or your event's not working, you got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different ways you're driving revenue. It really protects yourself. And diversification is how I think of anybody who's successful. If you're looking at, you want to be a multimillionaire has 7, 8, 9 different ways they generate revenue.
All those
if you're
different
not,
rivers of cash.
That's right. And so I just think it's smart business. And so that's how I look at the book publishing process.
Yeah, and I think that we're in a world now where things change so fast, right? You can go from one day thinking, oh my God, this particular platform has made me so much money and it's going to be here forever, to now it's adversarial to you or gone. Because, the funny thing about the whole technology venture capital thing is the guys that benefited from creating Facebook and Amazon and Google are actively trying to create the disruptors of those guys by investing the money they got from those deals. So there's this huge thing of like, what we're going to have to, what that field that we're going to play in is going to be so different in the future. You don't know if any of those revenue streams are just going to stop.
That's right.
Or if they're really, you talked about it in your opening here about how we got duped into a lot of these things because they seemed like the easier, softer way until they weren't. And now it's even harder to get off of those.
Well, as content creators, as all authors are, it's scary if you say, my audience is on Amazon and it's on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, which, by the way, have worked really well for a lot of authors, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I like to have the attitude of, I wake up and I look and, I still have access to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter X or whatever, but tomorrow I might not, because the rules continue to change. And by the way, they can do whatever they want. It's their own company.
It's their business,
I don't fault them. I can see why, if I build an audience on Instagram, that my followers don't see my stuff anymore, because it's better for Instagram's model to show them new content. And that's, I have to live with that as an author and as a content creator. So I think we just need to prepare for, how do we safeguard our author business? And we do so by having data and direct relationships with our readers through email subscriptions, through selling direct, and it doesn't mean you can't sell on Amazon, and it doesn't mean that you can't be on social media. It just means if you're a smart business person and you're an entrepreneur, there's a better way. It's like, would you ever start a business and not have control over distribution? Well, that's social media.
Right.
And so great, we have this free way that we can connect with our customers. but I really believe it's temporary.
Yeah. Well, and this isn't something new. Like I've lived in Chicago my whole life where Sears was a big thing, right? And if you got a deal with Sears, like your business was made. But the number of vendors that they partnered out of business by grinding them year after year for, more and more margin on the catalog, you got to a point where you would be like, listen, I can't afford to have your business. So like, it's not a new thing that in their profit maximization, vendors, and that's what you are as a content creator on that. You're a second citizen. But one thing I want to really have us kind of double click on and talk about is you brought up in your presentation yesterday about the assets and owning assets that can make you money. And I believe one of my big tenets is the idea that your intellectual property is an asset, your audience is an asset, and you need both of those assets because you can be really good in IP, and if you don't have the other asset, it's worthless.
That's right.
And if you have a really good audience asset, your IP can be kind of mediocre.
That's right. Well, so once you build that loyal audience, you would be very smart to create as many outside assets that you can. I would call them content brands, and I'll give you some examples of that, that don't include your name as an author. And that's what I really tried to do. So, okay, I wrote with Newt Barrett, Get Content, Get Customers in 2008. Great book, right? It's fine. It was our good starter book. But we were starting to build this audience, and I'm like, okay, what can I do so I can remove myself from this business at some point and it would stay valuable? A lot of authors can't do that because it's just them. So that's why I want to talk to a lot of people and say, okay, we built this audience. Okay, let's build an event brand. And our event brand was Content Marketing World. Okay, we monetized that in 6-7 different ways. Okay, what about our online experience? That was Content Marketing Institute. What about our training? Content Marketing Institute University. We have that part. We have an awards program, Content Marketing Awards. We have a West Coast event on technology, Content Tech. We have a podcast, This Old Marketing. So these are all things that 2013, 14, 15, I started to remove myself from, but the asset value of that only increased. So how can you, if you're an author and you say, if you remove yourself from the thing and the value goes up, that's very hard to come by. So that's where I'm telling all, it's like, great, yes, your personal brand is really, really important, but what you want to do is get your personal brand to build these other assets that you can do whatever you want with. Do you want to keep them forever and continue to drive revenue and profit? Great. Do you want to sell them and have an exit event at some point? Like I've done a few times and I really like to do that. You could do that as well. It just gives you more options. And I don't know, I mean, you know better than I do. I don't know if a lot of authors think about their stories, their characters, the worlds that they build. They think about their own path as an author, but I don't know if they're thinking about, I need to create all these different outside brands and IP and to send my audience to, and I can monetize in multiple ways.
Yeah, and again, that's why we're having folks like you come who have done this in a way, and then we can try and help to translate it. So I think a lot of authors envision a version of that in the sense of like, oh, it'd be nice if my books became movies. It would be nice if my books were, I had maybe special edition stuff, but they don't think about it how you just explained it, where it's like, how can I build these things in a way where like, and we're going to swing back to how you kind of partition things in a minute, something I heard at Social Media Marketing World I thought was really important. But this idea of like, okay, I'm going to work and build this particular asset, like doing limited edition books on my back series, maybe it is, and building that up in a way that you could walk away from in the perspective of how it runs. So maybe you have an assistant that runs it, that does your Kickstarters, whatever. Because the part that you're always going to need to be doing is the new book content.
Yeah.
And if you get it to where you have, some portion of your time is building that asset and writing the new books, and then you're thinking how it transitions over as a fiction author to just being another part of the story world readers can decide to participate in, then as long as you keep driving the new content and it flows downstream, it should keep everything going, right?
Yes.
Because in that case, that limited edition thing of your backlist, it's like, well, as long as I keep the backlist growing, there'll be new products, and that person will know what to do when the next book comes out and the next one.
Yeah, and you don't have to think, I think maybe people listening to this are like, I don't want to build a huge organization. I don't want to hire a lot of employees. But you got to remember, like, we were at Content Marketing Institute before we sold, we were 28 people, 2 employees. Another 26 people doing all the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Somebody running awards programs, somebody running the events. And my job was to host, which I love to do, and to keep writing, and to keep doing podcasts. So that was my job to do that.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff will run, like, you have to make that list. What am I good at? What do I like to do? I keep that. What am I not good at? What do I don't like to do? Like any author does. Push that off to the side so you can run these things and keep living the life you want to live.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want anybody to be working 60, 70 hours a week. There shouldn't be more work. And you don't, by the way, you don't launch all these things at the same time.
No.
These are like, okay, first I've got this book concept. And we're talking, I mean, this can be done, and you know better than I do on the fiction side. I mean, for my side of nonfiction, this is where you have an audience that has some kind of an ongoing issue. This is an industry maybe where you can be the leading informational expert, and then you build that informational brand around that. It's a much different beast if you're going to do it around a fiction. But at nonfiction, I love that challenge, and I think that's available for anybody in the nonfiction space.
Sure. So kind of like what you talk about, the tilt, like your little tilt on that content. I think for authors, what's analogous is like, what's your brand promise around this?
Yep.
Like what kind of story experience, what kind of story world are you bringing me to? One thing I want for you to dive a little deeper on is this idea that you've talked about, like when building out an audience. So when I saw you do your presentation, you're like, hey, when we did this, the first thing we did was I picked one audience, one medium, and it took, I think you said 18 months is the average. And what resonated for me was the idea of like, in fiction world, people think you just write a book and this audience is going to appear. They don't think about it from the perspective as a small business. It's like, oh, you just decided to go into a pretty saturated market with an unproven product and no audience.
Yep.
This is going to take some time.
Yes, exactly.
Can you talk more about that and your experience with it?
So first of all, yeah, this is a thing that you should figure it's going to take 2-3 years. Let's just be honest with it. So when we started in 2007 and 2008, we're like, okay, well, who is our audience? These are marketing professionals who are dabbling in content. Okay, I sort of get that. What are we going to provide them? Strategic and how-to information about the practice of content marketing. How do we stand out among and differentiate among the audience? Well, it wasn't called content marketing at the time. It was called custom publishing and custom media and branded content. And we went and said, it was all over the place. Could we bring it some structure and have a competitive advantage and a differentiation, as we call a content tilt? And we did that through naming it content marketing, very similar to, we've taken on this moniker here at this event of the content entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Nobody was using that term. It seems to be taking off. It's sort of like a little professional media company. So that's really important. But as we were going along, we started to build this audience around this niche of content marketing. We were building an email database, and then we're like, okay, we're running into some really heavy competition. This happened about 2011, 2012, because we ran up against HubSpot. A lot of people might know HubSpot.
Yeah.
They went forward with inbound marketing, which was sort of a tangential to content marketing. We had Content Marketing World Event. They had inbound, so we were competing head to head. And I'm like, I can't compete with HubSpot. They're going to be $1 billion company. What do we do? How do I differentiate? So we went upstream. We said, okay, we can't just say we're targeting content marketing professionals because that's too broad. We have to say we're targeting content marketing professionals in enterprise, very large companies. So we went that direction, and HubSpot, we said, HubSpot, you take small and medium size. We're going to take the large. And that was an additional pivot to our brand promise, if you will, that helped us differentiate. So it's those types of things. But first of all, I know a lot of authors listening to this might have multiple audiences. If you're going to do this model, to your point, you have to pick one where you said, okay, this topic, this niche, this differentiation area, we can be, if we do the work, can be the leading informational expert. So
Well, and I think also when you do that, you're able to do it better because you're clear on your message. You can be like, oh, I know the exact message that needs to be on the first line of copy on this ad that's going to get them to the point of becoming a lifetime fan, right? Like too often we're on this like, well, what's the new way I got to run an ad? Whose ads are working? And then you're just copying that. You're not thinking about like the first and last thing somebody may ever read of yours as an author is the first line of copy you've written, right?
That's right.
So if that becomes more like your story brand, like if it's distilled in there, that the tilt that you talk about, then that's what resonates, right? It's almost subconscious.
It is, but it's also, if you think about the book publishing process, we're gearing, especially nonfiction. Like I write 2 books. I've written a book every 2 years since 2008.
Okay.
Always another, but it's always building on the next one. And we had Epic Content Marketing, then we had Content Inc., then we had Killing Marketing, but it was all around the same concept. In this model, that's not enough. We send out a newsletter every week over that entire time period, and we needed that touch point. We also had a touch point a day on, let's say, LinkedIn. So we're touching. We also have a quarter. We did at that time a quarterly magazine. So we're reaching out to those people. So if you want to speed the process of success and really make this work and resonate with your audience, you do need to think about frequency. Like you do need to think about how many touch points. In the data that I've seen when working with media companies and content entrepreneurs, you need a solid 3 consistent touch points with your audience. So let's say your book is 1. Great. Email newsletter, another one. Ongoing educational webinars, maybe another one. It could be some kind of a mini magazine or ebook series, maybe. Those types of things we have to start thinking about, because you can't have, in a digital world like this, you can't have a 9-month, 12-month, 24-month gap in between communications. You're not going to build this kind of an asset.
Yeah. So let's take a little pivot on that. Let's go into Joverload mode, which is your term. Let's think about one of those touch points being community, because something that kind of is an emergent property of this is what happens out there with people connecting around the topic.
Yes.
And I think for fiction authors, there can be another layer to that where they're connecting with this imaginary character or the story world or that experience, right? Like there's people that have relationships in their parasocial relationships with Harry Potter and Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Or in the nonfiction world, the side of around the solution to the problem that you offer.
Yeah.
So I would love for us to kind of explore that together.
Well, I mean, we did something in association with this event, CEX, that is a little bit unique about building community. So we created something called a never-ending ticket to launch this event.
Okay.
And we didn't have the revenue coming in yet to launch a full-scale event. You know how much revenue you need to get an event off the ground. So we went out to our super fan community, email newsletter database of the Tilt. We had about 30,000 subscribers, and he said, we're going to do this event for content entrepreneurs. And we're selling 75 tickets, and the price was ranging, but it was about $3,000 a ticket for a never-ending ticket. I said, if you invest with us the first year, you'll get a ticket for life. It's 75 people of our super fans that signed onto that and said, yes, we want to be part of that, and we want to be part of a special community. So we get together, that group gets together every month, and that's me removing myself as an author or as a speaker. I come down off the stage and I sit with them. I'm not talking at them. I'm not telling stories at them. We're all communicating together.
Wow.
That's a different kind of model. So anybody thinking about that, you're expending a different kind of energy. That's a high-touch audience, very valuable. These are your super fans.
Yeah.
But again, that's very profitable. It underwrote. We wouldn't even have this event if it wasn't for those 75 people that said we are going to invest a lot of money with you to start this. So I would say, yes, I love that model. Think of who are the people that will support you, like your Kickstarter fans or whatever. Anything you do, that's great, but realize that's not just you telling stories anymore. That's you getting off the stage, getting out of your own head, getting out of your writing. You're coming down and you're talking with your readers, and you're helping them with their problems. And honestly, some authors don't want to do that. So you just
I know,
have to be careful.
Well, and I'll give you an example. I have a client. She decided she was going to embrace doing some in-person stuff, and she was going to be going to a town for a trip, and she writes historical romance, and there's a museum there. So she emailed her fans, hey, I'm going to be there. If you want to have lunch and go to this museum with me that's on topic for her, we'd love to do it. And she was shocked. She had 75 people reach back out to her. And what was so endearing was like her big concern. It's a little bit like, oh my God, what I'm on stage, but more so that like, I'm not going to be able to talk to all those people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's not the point. The point is those 75 people are going to connect around you and your brand, and they're going to find this belonging of people that love your books and love going to museums, and they're going to talk about books, and they're going to want their picture with you, but that's what'll drive it is their conversations.
That's
right. And that's something we all want. We all want to belong to a community that has the same beliefs and ideas that we have.
Well, to that point, sitting in front of you is this book called The Content Entrepreneur that we wrote with 33 members of that NET group.
That's right. I remember you telling me that story. That's so cool.
We're talking about community. The product of that is those people are now working with each other.
Shameless plug.
To create a really amazing book experience, and they're helping their own careers, and we're all helping each other do this. So when you do it, it's very difficult. This has been a 3-year process, but now we're building assets that would have never happened because these wonderful people are now working with each other and not just me.
Yeah.
Like I'm part of that group. I'm not like directing that group or talking at that group.
Yeah, and the thing is, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? Like, and I have a lot of people that like, hey, you have a virtual book club, and they're like, well, what if nobody shows up? Well, nobody knows. Well, what if only one person shows up? Then go in it with the attitude of like, this is awesome. I get to spend time with you, right? That one fan cares enough. That's what you need to start with, because that word of mouth starts with one person in their network.
And I would say if you're going to do that, limit it right off the bat. Say I'm this first 20, first 25, whatever. Higher price points, very limited access. You'll get the initial people to pay for it, and then once you find success there, you can always add more people.
Yeah.
So get it going, figure out what works and what doesn't, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's really cool. So knowing that you're going into kind of a different audience, this fiction audience, what things are you hoping to bring to them, and things that you've been thinking about knowing? Because I know you're already thinking about your speech for that, and you don't have anything else going on. But
exactly.
Like knowing that you were going to be there, what is it that you hope that they'll get out of the stuff you're going to talk about?
I believe that so I just look at it differently because I've been in media for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. I look at everything as an asset, and I look at everything as a media professional would. And it's like, okay, if I'm going to make this work, how do I drive 7, 8, 9 different types of revenue from it? So, and there's the book, and then there's the community, and then there's this off-brand, and there's whatever. But what I see a lot of fiction authors doing, and I don't know, I wrote a novel, but I'm not into it like other people are. I think they limit themselves by thinking about the things they have to do themselves because they're the writer. And when you think about the fact that it's bigger than you, your concept is bigger, the stories you're telling are bigger than just you.
Yeah.
And if you get yourself out of your own way, you can say, wow, this can be a big enterprise. Not like big and like it's going to take more time, or it could be like multiple millions of dollars, something that somebody might want to acquire someday, IP that can go in all different types of directions. So maybe that can bring that to the table, because I just think about that naturally, because I don't want to do something unless it has long-term staying power. Mm-hmm. And we run into that with a lot of the creators that are here. They're just thinking about something very small, and I'm like, that's fine. Right now, you're just starting, you're experimenting, you're figuring it out, but what's your goal?
Yeah.
What do you want to get out of it? Like, don't go into your writing project, it's like, oh, I just want to write a book. Okay, yes, I get it. But what's your why? Like, where do you want to? Do you want a better life for your family? You want a better job for your readers? What are you trying to do? And I guess if you start there with the goals and can figure out, oh, how am I going to reach those goals over the next 3 to 5 years? And we do that through creating assets and building great experiences for our audience.
Well, and what I'm trying to get fiction authors to understand is they're not authors, they're not writers, they're in the experience business.
Yep.
It just happens to be one of the experiences unfolds in the imagination of a reader or a listener, right?
Yep.
They direct that experience through their words or the narrator speaking, but the person that's buying that, the one that really, really matters in this whole thing, they're buying an experience. They're buying
Yes.
they know your ability with words gets them to that story world and that thrill or that steamy romance or whatever it is that they love really well. And that's that's what they're buying. So when you think about we're on this precipice of technological change and who knows what's coming next, you could be really afraid, or you could be like, holy cow, there is going to be infinite possibilities of how I can be an experience deliverer to a bigger and bigger audience going forward. Like, a lot of people get hung up on AI that, it's going to take out my job. What if it gives you more time to do or deliver some new experience we can never imagine?
Yeah, and you want to get up, honestly, every day, it's like, how can I positively touch my reader in some way that makes sense for my business? Because that's where we're at today. It's not just the book. It's everything. You have a podcast show experience. That's an audio experience.
Yeah.
You have an in-person event experience. You have that book experience in multiple formats. You might have different experience with sponsors that want to be part of your community that you never thought of before. But you have to, if you think strategically, you'd be like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Company would want to sponsor my thing or my event or my book or underwrite my entire book or all my Kickstarter stuff. Just think about it a little bit differently.
Yeah, well, I know a particular guy who writes post-apocalyptic fiction. Great, my family always listen to his books, an audiobook in the car when we drive around, and he has kind of done some product placement of weapons and prep gear in his books, and he has companies that send him stuff. So it's not necessarily like he's looking to plug products, but like the fact that these brands see what he's doing and they're like, hey, we'd love to send you this new rifle we got.
Yeah.
Because they want to associate with that brand. They love that story world. And they know, by the way, if you're reading this guy's books, you're probably our target audience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so many. So again, with like AI, a lot of scary things going on, but probably more opportunity. So just experiment, but be positive. There's a lot of really good stuff out there because you've got stories to tell and you've got audiences that want to hear those stories in multiple formats over time. So,
well, Joe, it's been awesome having you here.
It's been a Joverload.
The Joverload has been delivered. We're going to give your point to do your shameless plug here, but I just want to jump over you and shamelessly plug CEX. We have had such an amazing time here. We brought the team here and we sponsored the publishing track. We want to help in the future. Our team has learned so much about how to run a show and had their wells filled by what you guys have done here. Like, thank you for that. And anybody that's in the area, if you're nonfiction, you should be at this thing. If you're fiction, you should be at this thing because you guys aren't just delivering on like, come here and learn how to, make money off your newsletter. You're trying to help people be entrepreneurs.
Yes, it's business first,
Yeah.
and that's where. And the same thing for authors.
Yeah,
you're running a business.
Yeah.
You just happen to do that through writing books. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for the support. This event is better because of you and your team. So, thank you for that. Those people interested, we're at cex.events. We'll have the 2025 show information out shortly, so there will be a show next year. But anybody that wants more information on what we're doing at the Tilt and working with Lulu, go to thetilt.com. Get our newsletter. The newsletter is probably the best way to start.
Yeah, it's a great newsletter.
It's 2 times a week newsletter, and it talks about all the stuff we've been talking about today.
Awesome. Joe, it's good, and we'll see you in November.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.